After what I saw on Selection Sunday with teams like Indiana, West Virginia, and others left out of March Madness, the NCAA and the tournament committee are just flat out corrupt.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, and it is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later on in the episode. Well, speaking of later in the episode, we'll talk about which players could be staying, who could be going, and some important dates that you need to know for the transfer portal for Indiana basketball as we are now officially in the offseason, plus some coaching search updates, names that we've been talking about that I'm just kind of solidifying at this point, and things could be happening very quickly. But want to start the episode about a topic that it's just been burning me inside. And we talked about this yesterday a little bit with Indiana being left out of the NCAA tournament. We talked about this on Sunday as it happened, an immediate reaction episode that you can go and check out here on the Locked On Hoosiers channel. But I just can't get over the fact that I think the NCAA is flat out corrupt. I think the selection committee is corrupt. I think there are major issues with how teams are selected for the NCAA basketball tournament, how players, some are eligible, some are not eligible, some are given extra years, some are told you can't, whether you are trying to get another medical red shirt or you have family emergencies. I mean, there's just so many things that have happened with the NCAA and involving that organization with those four letters, those colors, and just the logo itself. I think we're just done with this organization. And for me personally, I've been done with the NCAA, which there's some things happening right now out of the state of West Virginia that have kind of sparked this whole conversation for us today, where the governor and the attorney general out of the state of West Virginia, because the Mountaineers were left out of the NCAA tournament, they have now gone into an investigation and asking how teams are picked and selected and why certain teams are picked and selected. And listen to the term that was used. The governor of West Virginia called them the National Corrupt Athletic Association, the NCAA, as the National Corrupt Athletic Association. And I think he's right. I think he's absolutely correct. And Hoosiers and Mountaineers, heck, even Broncos from Boise State and possibly Buckeyes out of Ohio State are all kind of coming together right now and saying, we were screwed. We were left out. And that's what we talked about on Sunday, because you cannot convince me. We're over 2 days removed from this, and I'm still not convinced that North Carolina deserved to be in March Madness. They got in because of their name. They got in because of the logo, and they got in because they believe it'll drive up television ratings, which it's all about the money, and that's nothing new, right? But you can't convince me that Texas is an NCAA tournament team that deserved to be in March Madness. That's a team that has a losing quad 2 record. They're 3-5 in quad 2 games. Talk about some SEC bias and really just NCAA feeding what they believe will be the best, I guess, numbers. I'm not even going to say the best product, because North Carolina flat out sucks. And they didn't pick them because of good quality basketball. They picked them because of the logo. And so for us here in Indiana, it's very easy to say, well, if you win more games, you would have made the tournament. Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. But that's not the argument here. For teams like Indiana and West Virginia, our resume kind of spoke for itself. Our resume was good enough defense at that time for us to get into the tournament. But it turns out we were never going to get in there because of a corrupt system and really just a broken organization that runs the whole thing. And we are so close, it's not even funny, to conference tournaments, right? Big Ten tournament, SEC tournament, ACC tournament, what have you. Major conference tournaments are about to be non-existent. They're about to be worthless because the committee has basically told you, and sometimes have flat out admitted, they don't make their decisions based off of what happens in major conference tournaments. Something in the SWAC or the Mountain West, yeah, they have to, because you have an automatic qualifier. If somebody wins that's not supposed to, then they have to reseed and reshuffle. Did you know that 14 one seeds in their conference tournaments were upset this week and didn't win? That means the committee actually had to work and do their jobs a little bit, which I'm sure they were just extremely upset about. But they don't use the fact that, Wisconsin made a run in the Big Ten tournament, or the fact that, I don't know, right? Tennessee made it to the SEC championship game. Like, they don't use that in their seeding. That's already done. They've told you that. They've admitted they've already made their decision before those games even think about taking place. Folks, that's wrong, which is why I think conference tournaments are going to be gone. On the football side, I think conference championship games are going to go away anyway. But I've been saying for years, and we are getting closer and closer to it by the day, that major conferences and major teams like the Big Ten, like the SEC, which in this situation, I don't know why you would. You just broke the record for the most teams ever in the NCAA tournament. But eventually they're going to break away and tell the NCAA to kick rocks, because this organization does not help or benefit major teams and programs and players and coaches anymore. It just doesn't. And that's what it was there to do, was to represent and defend and fight for college athletes at major universities and all universities. But it doesn't do that anymore. And when you are a team who felt like you deserved a spot in the tournament and get left out, and there's no real explanation, there's no real defense, there's no real, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? They have no repercussions. That's it. There's no repercussions for the people who are on the NCAA tournament committee. The athletic director of North Carolina got a bonus because his team made it to the tournament, but don't worry, he wasn't in the room when they made the vote. Give me a break. It's unbelievable that we're buying this crap. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And the NCAA basketball tournament, the fact that we have let the NCAA control it for so long, and don't even get me started on the women's side of things, where they have just treated them so poorly with the arenas they've given them, with the facilities they've provided them, with the housing they provided them. It's been atrocious if you've kept up with that over the past several years. And the fact that we've let the NCAA, who is a complete corrupt organization, run college sports so poorly for so long, it's truly incredible. And while I hate that Indiana was left out, I'm glad we're not the only ones in this situation. And maybe this whole thing from West Virginia with the governor and the attorney general, maybe it goes somewhere. I don't know. Seems a little out there, sure. Seems a little excessive, maybe, but somebody's got to do it. And if you're going to take down somebody like the NCAA, you're going to have to come at them with a lot. But they've proven over the past couple of years that if you come at them hard enough, they don't really have a whole lot to stand on. So I think they're a terrible organization. I think they represent college athletes extremely poorly, and they screwed up. The committee is corrupt. And they left good teams out. They left deserving teams out to fit whatever type of narrative that they wanted to fit for March Madness in 2025. All right, coming up here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast, we will take an update, or get an update, I should say, on the Indiana coaching search, on the names we've discussed and where they kind of stand right now. That's coming up for you next, right here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Nissan. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On college basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart, from top-seeded stars to unexpected upsets. These guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada and clear-cut team of the week is the Florida Gators. The Gators, led by Walter Clayton, 17 points a game, just dominated the SEC tournament, winning each game by at least 9 points. Not only did Florida grab the fourth number one seed, but they are the nation's most efficient offense heading in to the NCAA tournament. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what the Florida Gators have done here. It's clear that our team of the week is out here and ready to conquer the road ahead with the confidence just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get them term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day right now, so protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric, MEET, fabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. With Gerber Life, again, that is meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. All right, welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers, your daily spot for all things Indiana athletics. And thank you so much for making that so. If you are listening on audio, be sure that you are having your notifications turned on, whether that's Spotify or Amazon, Apple, whichever way you listen. Doesn't matter to me. I just appreciate that you are. And leave us those 5-star reviews if you can and are able to or haven't already, right? We appreciate you doing that. And if you're watching on YouTube, you know the drill by this point, right? Like that video, hit that thumbs up. It helps it get it out there. The YouTube algorithm works somehow. Don't really know, but that's what they tell me. So I appreciate you doing that. Leave your thoughts on the YouTube comments below as well. Do you believe the NCAA is working for the student athlete? Do you believe they are still the organization that needs to be running college athletics? You let me know in the YouTube comments. And then if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. We're making a push to 5K, and I want you to be a part of that. So thank you so much and really do appreciate your support. Well, let's get some updates on the Indiana basketball coaching search because we did an episode yesterday about Brownell from Clemson, which seems to be a mixed bag of feelings, a mixed bag of emotions, I think, for a lot of Indiana fans. And look, I'm not pulling this name out of you know where. I'm not just coming up with it because I think it's funny. It's legit. And this is a name that is in the running to be the head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers, to be the next head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers. And along with Ben McCollum and Drake, two guys that are going to be actively coaching in the NCAA tournament. From what I've seen and what I've heard, I feel from the fan base, and this is from a lot of you, whether it be social media or on our YouTube videos, where you would be okay with Ben McCollum, but most people are not fans of Brownell from Clemson. And I'm sure there are groups that don't like McCollum. I'm sure there are groups that like Brownell, but it just seems the fan base is not pleased with either option. And look, I get it. I totally do. It feels like we've come a long way from the names that originally popped up over a month ago, right? It's been over a month now since Mike Woodson in Indiana had this announcement that he was going to step down and retire and not be the head coach next year. And you start talking about the big names that were immediately thrown out there. Now, whether these had a chance or not, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about names that were thrown out there by you, the Indiana fan base. Brad Stevens, Bruce Pearl, Nate Oates, guys like that, right? Scott Drew was in there too. We've had several episodes about all of these guys. And it seems like we have come a long way, not saying good or bad, but from that point to where we are now, where McCollum and Brownell, and I think Chris Collins too from Northwestern, are all in the running for this job. Now, things could be moving very, very quickly for several reasons. And the Iowa job being open now has a lot to do with this because, of course, Iowa is not in the NCAA tournament. They fired their head coach, right? You've got that going. And you also have West Virginia, who did not make the NCAA tournament. Clearly, we've had that conversation. and their head coach in DeVries, somebody we talked about, could be linked to the Indiana job. We talked to our friend Mountaineer Paul with the Locked On West Virginia podcast, and I think there was a little bit of smoke there. But we also have talked about why Iowa was a big time, I guess, contender for DeVries, and I think that's where they're going. I think they have completely locked onto him, right? No pun intended, and they're going after him. And if they can get the money, not just to pay his contract and pay him a good contract, but to give him NIL funds to be successful there in Iowa, I think he'll take that job. But I think Ben McCollum's right there too. And I think McCollum could be linked to either Iowa. Well, I'm not saying could. He is linked to Iowa and to Indiana. I think there's a clear option on which one's the better job for somebody, but that's just our opinion here in Bloomington, right? I just think that McCollum is having a really good season. He has a really good career. He has a really good resume while young, yes, and a very raw career at this level, and not even at this level. I'm just talking D1. He's a really good option, is McCollum. Is his offense slow? Yeah, it is, but it's efficient. Does he win? Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm probably going to pick Drake to get a first round upset in the NCAA tournament, and they very well could make a run to the Sweet 16. But you know who else could do that? Clemson. I think Clemson's a good team. I think they match up really well with a lot of teams in their portion of the bracket. And you can make the argument whether you think Brownell's a good coach or not. That's totally up to you. That's your opinion. I have my opinion. But I'm telling you, he's in the running. And I'm telling you that if McCollum somehow gets in the Iowa circle and or possibly even gets that job, if DeVries doesn't take it for whatever reason, then Brownell may just be the answer for Indiana. And maybe that's the way they go. I don't know. But I think it's a very smart idea. If you are Scott Dolson, the athletic director at Indiana, you need to take a pulse on where this fan base stands. You need to have an idea of what the fan base is going to do on who you hire. Now, I'm not saying you totally make your decision based on that, but you need to have some sort of, not a survey, but something like that. Read the room, basically, is what I'm saying. Read the room if you're Scott Dolson, because as I said to start this segment, I feel like fans are okay with McCollum, kind of would be like, all right, let's just see how it goes. Brownell, on the other hand, just doesn't seem to have the momentum that others did. And whether you like him or not, that's up to you. He has recent success. You cannot argue that. The guy's been to an Elite Eight. You can't argue that. And I think has a chance to make another run this season. But a longevity thing, right, over his career, yeah, he's been okay, I would say, over his entire career. There is a recency, I'm not going to say bias, but you have a harder look, a scoped in look on recency, on recent success for Brownell. McCollum, I've told you what I think. He could be your coach for the next 25 years. Or he may not be able to handle the spotlight and handle this big of a program, and he may flame out in 3 or 4 years. I don't know. And then there's Chris Collins, who apparently is in the circle to get the Villanova job. Sure, I don't know. All I'm saying is these names are legit, and you can choose to believe them if you want to, or you can deny it until the cows come home. That's up to you. But Indiana is now going to ramp up this search, and the fact that there are other jobs that may dictate who takes this job or who Indiana goes after for this job, I think is very important. And I'll say something that I've continued to say with the NCAA tournament starting this week. If teams get eliminated that have coaches who are interested or IU is interested in, if those teams get eliminated from the tournament, don't expect it to be very long for Indiana to make a decision. I'm still standing on what I've said. By the time a national champion is crowned, Indiana will have their next head coach. Who that's going to be, we don't know yet. But I'm telling you, the names right now are in the works. Indiana is making some decisions and trying to figure this thing out. But these names are legit candidates. Now it's just comes down to whether they're the ones that get the job, or maybe it could be somebody else. Right now, all we can do is sit and wait. All right, coming up here in our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers, a couple of things you need to know in terms of the transfer portal, right? Because we're getting a new coach and now we're in the offseason. The heck is this team going to look like this time next year, or I guess November of next year? We'll talk about that in our final segment right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with marketing campaigns, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. Plus, you can post a job, it's free and it's simple, and within a day with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Visit upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's upwork.com, upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again so much for being here. And look, we're having a blast. I know we're not in the NCAA tournament. The women are, though. We talked a little bit about that yesterday and excited to follow the Lady Hoosiers and hopefully what is a deep run in the NCAA tournament. And a coaching search can be fun, but it can be stressful too. And we just all are looking for the answers, but really do appreciate you being here. And again, following along here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. But something that I was thinking about the other day and actually saw an article that had some of the dates in it is the transfer portal information that you need to know, because we're entering that spot where Indiana is getting a new head coach. Our regular season and postseason is all done, and we're going to have to rebuild this team basically from the ground up next year, because you have a ton of dudes graduating. You're going to have guys transfer out. It's going to be a lot is the best way for me to say it. And so here's what you need to know. Remember, the transfer portal window used to be 45 days. It's now down to 30. So you have less time to make your decisions that you need for a college basketball program. But here's what you need to know. You are going to see the portal open on March 24th. Okay, it's going to open up on March 24th and it will close on April 22nd. That means right now it's going to open right after the round of 32, and it's going to go from the round of 32, go all the way through the tournament, and it concludes, of course, on the national championship game. But you're going to have just over a month, just about a month, to do what you need to do in the transfer portal. So just right now, this has nothing to do with Indiana for a second, because we're not in the NCAA tournament. But can we talk about how broken that calendar is? You're talking about teams who are in the tournament that are having to decide what they get in the transfer portal or who's going to leave in the transfer portal while you're actively playing NCAA tournament games. Now, after the round of 32, you're down to just a handful of teams. But it's the same way in football, and this is why coaches have been arguing it. You get punished for being a good team. You get punished for making a run in your postseason because you have less time and effort and resources to focus on who the future players on your team are going to be. And in college basketball, I tell you all the time, my everydayers, you know this, one player can make all the difference. This isn't football where that second string corner, yeah, it'd been nice to have him, but we'll make do without him. You can go get a starting center in the transfer portal right now for college basketball, and that be the guy that takes you to the NCAA tournament, right? Players mean they're so much more valuable in basketball because you have so much less of them. It's just basic math. So that's what you need to know. And it'll open up March 24th. That's about a week or so from now when this episode comes out, and it'll run through April 22nd. Of course, there are some things to consider, some rules, right? Or I guess some changes and exceptions, you could say, for Indiana and for several other programs right now. That gets extended by 30 days if your coach leaves. If he is fired, if he leaves, whatever the case may be, you get an extra 30 days. So whenever Mike Woodson, right, whenever this is all said and done, you then get more time to go get players, or guys can leave, right? That's the big thing, is you get extra days for your players to leave and all of that. So whenever the new coach comes in, we'll figure out the exact dates and figure out exactly what he's going to have. You have 2 high school recruits coming in with Zerno and Trent Sisley. That is hopefully something you can keep. Sisley's been pretty vocal about wanting to stay, right, and wanting to remain an Indiana Hoosier despite Mike Woodson leaving. Hopefully Zerno, the overseas kid, will stay that way as well. And it's going to be weird. It's going to be different, and you just got to kind of figure it out from there. But that's what Indiana is going to be dealing with. And so hopefully whoever the new coach is hits the portal hard, uses NIL to their advantage, and goes and basically rebuilds a roster, because Luke Goody's going to try and get an extension, I should say, on his eligibility, but you're losing a lot of guys from graduation, and a lot of guys do not have any eligibility left. So it's going to look so different next year. It's going to be kind of crazy, but those are just some of the forefront things that you need to know in terms of the transfer portal. We're going to cover it all right here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast, including who the new coach will be, when that's going to happen, breaking news when it does happen, plus the transfer portal, and a whole lot more. So that's going to do it, though, for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Again, thank you so much for being here. Cannot stress that enough, and how much fun we're having, and I hope you're having the same as well, okay? We are back tomorrow, Hoosier fans, all right? So until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.